Ready.
All right, good afternoon. It is 5:07 PM on July 3rd, 2024. And this District of Columbia State Board of Education working session is now called to order. This month's working session is being held in person at the Marion S. Berry Junior Building. However, in-person attendance is limited to some board members, staff, and guests. The working session is also being streamed live on the State Board's YouTube page for members of the public to attend. Please visit SBOE.tc.gov to learn how to submit and present testimony at an upcoming State Board public meeting. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of the quorum. Turning to the Executive Director Butler.
Representative Kelly,
Here.
Representative Villaflor, Representative Washington, Representative Yarkin, Representative Best,
Present.
Representative Chang, Representative Goulet, Representative Henderson,
Here.
Representative O'Leary,
Here.
Representative Reed,
Present.
Representative Williams, Representative Patterson, Representative Thompson.
Present.
Madam President, you have the floor.
Again, welcome to our July working session. At this time, I'm happy to share updates from the leadership report. A couple of things that I want to note. First, we are doing our best to get as much information about the Austin transition as possible. We do have a change in our meeting time because we have a new interim superintendent, and her schedule is different. So we will have a meeting coming up with Austin next week instead of the time we have planned. I believe the days are running together, but I sent an email asking folks if there were things that would be helpful to know about transition, more specifically, things from bodies of work are particularly helpful, and we try to make sure we have everything from contacts to timelines. So please, if you have not taken a look or responded back to that, please do so. Second, I want to note that since we last met, the budget has been finalized, both the full budget and the Budget Support Act. I really want to thank everyone who did their best to work on all the advocacy and all of the bottom line things for our agency, especially our office heads. We were able not only to get capital dollars for our state board office, but we, of course, we're able to get an HR person that we desperately needed as a agency. That was a really big win, especially in a tight budget year. And we're able to move all of our positions that were COVID funded to local dollars. So that is all official now. I'm going to say thank you in advance for the work folks are going to do as far as the office relations. I know that is an own lift and labor of love. But I'm glad that we were able to get those things done this budget season. Last, a couple of things from the DMV's office. I think most folks know, and if you do not, the recommendations from the boundary and the conference process have been accepted by the mayor. A couple of things the DMV is asks us for some support around encouraging families to enroll. Because apparently enrollment is down across all sectors. Families are not completing their enrollments. And we really need to know where students are going to be for the coming year. And second, while I believe it was noted at our public meeting in May that there is not money for a math task force in the budget, DME is still planning to focus on instructional support for both math and AI. I do not have more details as far as what that looks like. But that is what we got. Last, friendly reminder about other meeting panels, which we will talk a little bit more about today. Especially that one coming back, which I think we need some member supports for decision making as far as the line goes. But those are really the main things from the leadership report. If you folks have any questions? All right. Hearing that, please return to the Executive Director Butler for her.
Good evening, members of the DC State Board. Over the last month, the State Board team has been busy. We started planning our annual back to school ad campaign with Ramada and held our first all agency retreat with the Ombudsman and Student Advocate Office. We hosted a team from DGS to begin site planning for the SBOE office renovation. And we completed the interview and selection of our next strategic communications fellow, who is slated to start on July 15th. I want to take the time to thank our outgoing House fellow, Alyssa Rashard, for all of her hard work over the last year. Her proactive and engaging communication tactics and strategy helped the state board during a time when we had limited communications capacity. I am excited to announce, as President Thompson discussed, the state board did secure an in-house human resource FTE in the FY25 budget. This strategic win aligns with the agency's growth and evolution and will further our efforts to maximize operational efficiency. We are working with the DCHR classification department on potential job description, and we hope to begin recruiting in August and to have a person onboarded by late October. A few housekeeping reminders. Last week, you received the scoring rubrics and application for the 2024-2025 student representative positions. Please prioritize reviewing these applications and submit your scores in your individualized rubrics by July 18th. Also, if you would like to use your constituent engagement funds, we need to know your request no later than August 7th, 2024. If your board is hosting any back to school events, please email the date, time, logistics, and point of contact to Javon no later than July 19th. We are creating a spreadsheet with all of the events so that we can see where we possibly support. In the coming weeks, our new PIO, Andrew, hopes to host a strategic communication training for the board. Please look out for additional details in your inbox. As we approach the month of August, I am asking all committees to forego meetings during this time. Since there is no public meeting scheduled, state board staff will use this time to rest, reflect, and prepare for next school year and fiscal year, as we are in the last quarter of the FY24 budget. At the August working session, the SBOE offices will share our initial thoughts on the agency's FY26 budget. We will begin discussing the board's FY26 education priorities letter at the September working session, with a goal to complete our annual budget letter in early November and transport it before the mayor begins deliberations. The team will send additional information as we get closer to that date. Lastly, we will begin planning for the board's fall retreat once the new student representatives are selected and sworn in. If you have any suggestions or comments, please feel free to email those to me. This concludes my report, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Have we done the executive director performance evaluation? It seems like we haven't. It's been a lapse since that being completed. Okay, what's the?
Well, I like to do it, so that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know you didn't evaluate yourself. But I'm just curious because I believe it's been over a year. We haven't done.
Well, we would have done it last year, so it would have been a year yet, like it would have been on the same cycle. We probably will look at doing it for coming starting evaluation like in the fall, and we actually will also probably do an update at the next meeting. But like we have to look into hiring for statute for Dan's position, also student advocate, because that's coming this way.
It seems like we would have did it within the what was that? Intermediary period, what is it called? Interim, not interim, but that temporary period.
Probation.
There we go, probational period. I was like, it starts with a P and it wasn't coming out. But cool, like we'll do one in the fall. Because I just usually remember like student evaluations and executive director would usually come up at the same time, like a Google form. Is it anticipated to be the same process where it'll be a
No,
Google form?
Actually, the state board voted on an entirely new process for performance of the ombudsman, the chief student advocate, and myself in the revised SOPs.
Okay.
So literally the details like dates, time, the form that is used is all in the SOPs that you all have already voted on.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was one of the discussions of sort of like, how do we standardize it? How do we make sure that everyone is aware of the process?
Right.
So based on Robert and Frank's feedback, we put that in, put that into the new SOPs.
Got it.
Other questions? I believe I'm next turning over the next 30 minutes to our chief student advocate and Davis to provide us with updates about the student safety and support recommendations.
Even everyone, I'm Dan Davis, with folks on the live stream, joined by the Torres, program associate in the student advocate office. We'll talk about a few things tonight. Mainly, we're going to talk about the student safety enhancement review report, that process, charging tasks, the report itself, and the recommendations that came out of it. Some of the work our office is doing around student safety, our student safety survey, and focus groups, and some of the work that is coming out of the parent advocacy this past budget cycle around the community solution conversations. So the School Safety Coordination Act of 2023 charged the DME to stand up a committee to really take a look at what student safety is. Came out of a bill originally not put forth in Parker and kind of worked its way through the budget process to the Student Safety Coordination Act. It essentially tasked the committee to review and discuss the current state of school safety, ideal conditions, schools, schools, prevention and intervention strategies, as well as incidents. It was a small window. The bill was passed in October, the report was due in February. In that time, there were 10 members that was named to the committee. I was named for the SBOE as well as 9 other members that were named from different various government agencies, from council, and SJ. As well as there were 2 parents and 2 students. Both of the students were DCPS students. One student was at Banneker, the other student was at Roosevelt State. So in the Coordination Act, there were 12 things that are being charged in the committee that were supposed to be included in the report. Out of those 12 things, 6 of those launched points were things that we could actually tackle. The other points were essentially data, landscape data that needs to be collected from DCPS regarding positioning numbers and kind of staff numbers and levels and roles that can build, as well as similar to PCSB. So 6 launch points that we were kind of tasked with being identified. We're recommending staff configurations for a school safety team, methods of prevention and interventions that can be used to minimize and respond to school safety incidents, procedures for enhancing campus security without compromising the privacy of students, practices for engaging students and parents in the school community about safety needs, protocols for coordination between school-based employees and safe paths and safe block programs, safe routes to school programs, recommended guidelines for emergency response with our public safety personnel. This was supposed to happen in that window from October to February. It was a large lift. It didn't become that. What it did become was us taking a public health approach at the start point and really working into these 6 points around what can be done in the committee, what can actually be done in the city, and what can actually happen in a more coordinated way for students and families as well as our school leaders. Between November and February, we had 5 meetings as a committee. There was an additional 12 focus groups that was done with students from the district, I believe students from SBOE Youth Advisory Committee also participated in the process, as well as mixed students and a mix of charter and DCPS schools. School leaders were also part of the process in focus groups, and several stakeholders paid to Justice Lab, to essentially different government institutions were part of the stakeholder process. But with that, all of those meetings, we got to the 6 points and six common themes around where the recommendations of the report kind of stays. So first one is to get more safety back into the school building, strengthening the school safety teams, keeping small stuff from escalating, for improving safety information flow into and out of schools, and give schools better safety intervention tools, as well as establish a set of resources for all of the students who are most at risk regardless of school. If you guys are familiar, on the report, there's around 30 total recommendations. They're broken down into two categories. Categories one, things that can be done now. There's around 10 of those recommendations. Recommendations where the lift is coordination, the lift is things that we're already doing now, and changes in practices, changes in policies. And then there were 20 other recommendations there's 10 recommendations that were that low lift. Probably another recommendation that was an embracing of some of different practices, embracing the national service plan, embracing some of the research strategies around drug-free zones. Those things are also incorporated into those lower lifts in the 10 recommendations. The other 20 recommendations would require resources and or policy changes. Policy changes, I mean, piece of council action. With that though, with these 30 different recommendations, we really had a sense of a reflection of what students wanted, what school leaders wanted, and kind of what was at the time, it was produced, feasible out of the beginning. And then this report came out. I want to say the draft report came out in February. I think you guys had a chance to take a look at it beforehand, and this was kind of done before the budget process. It was really clear for everyone. So some of the recommendations are a little bit more pie in the sky than others. Several of those recommendations have been put forward in the uplift legislation that was proposed by the mayor. Those recommendations were the truancy referral process, the referral to recommendation, recommendations for modifying the suspension code and the alternative replacement. Those are three recommendations that came out of the committee that are currently being discussed. There are several recommendations that are being discussed that are more just practice recommendations. So the updates to the Safe Passage, Safe Blocks program, the expansion of that's moved forward already, the DSJ, as well as creating the process of creating the student transfer file development files. Those are things that are in progress and moving forward now. I can talk more about the recommendations if you have specific questions about the recommendations, or I can move into the next part of my conversation.
I have two questions. One is, in our engagement sessions, what was attendance like? And what kinds of things did you learn that are different or added to the DME's recommendation? So in the engagement sessions that were ran from the beginning, especially the engagement sessions that we hosted, I would say, there were a lot of things that were similar, but one of the things that we really dug in on was around social media use, kind of what that balance is. We were not doing this, not all 10 of us agreed on all the recommendations, but the consensus was these are the recommendations that should move forward. But one of the things that we noticed in our focus groups that was a little bit different from what the DME got of their focus group was around social media use. So social media use, the DME got from students that there was a feeling that it was beyond control. It was just something that folks have to live with and deal with. And students didn't really think that was necessarily on just school leaders or adults in the building to kind of maintain or to kind of rein in. That was what the DME kind of came away with. We came away with something slightly a little bit different around the social media use. I mean, we had a lot of students that were willing to say we can give up phones in the building, but also at the same time there were students that were clear about there's a need for us to have social media use as we navigate some of the things that are going on outside of the school. In particular, we had a few students that described using social media, some of the say the name of the site. Using some of the crowdsourced local, hyper-local news channels or on social media to know whether or not there's an incident occurring in the neighborhood or around home, or whether or not. Yes, so not necessarily in the neighborhood, students were using Kimmel News, Washington Foreign Problems, and there's another one as more colorful, like I'm not mentioning the meeting right now. But they would use that to be like, all right, this is how I need to change when I navigate home. And so there was more nuance into how social media is being used.
But
Besides,
to me, that sounds still similar to what the DME is saying, right? It's if what you're saying is the DME's focus groups were stating that there's not much that we can do to regulate or control what's put out, right? Were there students that were saying, actually, please do?
so I think that was, so there were students saying, please do, but I think where the DME got from that was you need to use cell phone bans.
Ah, I see.
Right. Where what you got from it was there's a little bit more nuance.
And attendance?
So we asked in the survey we have in this today.
Sorry, I meant attendance in the actual engagement sessions.
Oh.
That you did.
The beginning, there were small group engagement sessions, no more than 10 or so, that are student groups. Our groups, we were generally no more from 10 to 20. And we would do multiple groups.
But we always got at least 10.
Yeah, we were going to school days.
Okay.
So our engagements were,
Smart.
yeah,
I like that.
during social studies class. Sometimes we did, during lunch, during lunch block, we set up.
Right.
Or connected with the after school provider and engage that.
That's great. Thank you.
That was, cell phone.
Yes,
Is there any movement or is anyone talking about the fact, about banning cell phone use for the school?
I think there's conversation, but I don't believe it's happening beyond the LEA. I think LEAs are making those decisions individually. For some schools that make it is on school by school basis. There are some schools that have total outright bans, they have lockers. That's part of the process. There are some schools that, earn cell phone rights and cell phone privileges. As you can surely if we don't do those. But we haven't gotten to the place where I haven't seen where there's just an outright ban on, you can't have this race.
From my understanding, it's the principal or the head of school's decision in each
Correct.
school, right?
Yep.
The problem with that is that, because a lot of, especially with high schools, students aren't all in the neighborhood schools. And, news travels fast. I mean, I'm a big advocate for not allowing the students to have phones. I didn't allow it in my classroom. But I know that it's the current research is that not having phones in the schools is very effective. With cutting down on a lot of the problems. I didn't know if that was on that.
No, I think there's been a lot of conversation around on these in school buildings. There's a lot of arguments to be made in both spaces, and there's also arguments to be made around the general safety of it being in the nation's capital. God forbid there's another January 6th thing occurred, and our students need to know, like, hey, don't go, you need to get out. Your students on that day, like, don't go home, just stay in the school building. I'm coming to pick you up. That would have been a problem if those students were leaving the school building. That happened around 2 o'clock. That was the prime time our students were traveling and getting ready to travel home. So there's a lot of nuance on how on what that decision is and kind of what's right for each school building. I believe there's a balance that just needs to be made between the school community and school leaders, students, and their families.
Two quick questions on this, but first a comment. I was really thrilled to see they did recommend additional OST sports development programs. I think that's something good. Obviously, it requires further resources, but I think really important to see in the report. How did you touch upon the issue of bullying? That's been the biggest issue I've heard about bullying in school, bullying just outside of school. I didn't see it addressed specifically, singling it, but how did you in the group look at that issue?
So in the group, I think one of the things that there was a lot of energy around was the SEL standards that were out and the potential for conflict resolution additional conflict resolution standards to come out that would kind of address some of those bullying things. In our annual report last year, we made a call for us to kind of revisit the bullying task force that kind of stood up the original bullying laws of 2012. We haven't had any updates to our bullying laws since the bullying laws got created.
Yeah.
And there's beyond social media, beyond phones, ways kids are interacting with each other now is very different from the way they were doing in 2012. In our focus groups and in some of some of the data that we'll show later that we got from our student survey, you'll see that bullying and harassment is one of the top 5 categories.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure, I think it's really important we try to distinguish between like two neighborhood groups that are kind of going back and forth with each other with conflict resolution versus I'm really not sold on if you got one student bullying another, like some of the restorative programs. I think you're putting the bullied student in an awkward position. I haven't really gotten a positive feedback from how that's been working or whether it's even been successful at all. And it's just kind of, I haven't seen any movement on this issue at all. I know the principals are trying to address it, but like, it would have been nice to get some guidance, I think, from this report. I think other than kicking it down the road.
One recommendation that is in the report that's closer to the things they can do with resource is the expansion of restorative justice coordinators. One of the things that we have seen in schools that have a strong restorative justice culture that is just beyond, doing circles after incidents. That is when you circle for everything. That's just part of what their culture is. It works, but in schools that are only using it for de-escalation or for mediation purposes, it's not a great practice. It's very much a culture thing that has to be bought into. It's also very much a culture thing that needs to be bought into early on in earlier grades. Students are used to the restorative practice and the circle process early on. It does wonders for them, junior high and high school. I usually don't call it schools, but this is a good call out wrong ground in their process. It's a totally different feeling as soon as you walk in the building. And they all in on bullying, kind of all in on that family, type of all in on restorative justice practice. That kind of family building tradition of we're gonna have circles, we're gonna talk about problems, we're gonna figure out, what it is that we need to move forward and what it is to make everyone whole.
Okay, and then the second question, I guess, there was reductions the council made to school security. I'm still trying to understand exactly what impact that has on all of this. Have you or any members of the task force been able to kind of quantify what the reductions would look like for the local schools? And what impact that would have on what you're trying to do with this? Like, I feels like we're stepping backwards, to be honest.
So when they did the count for school personnel that was done before the budget process, we haven't had a chance to do the count with the new updated school budgets or the new updated school formal that's been happening. I do know there's a lot of advocacy because part of this was standing up, making recommendations on what safety teams should be, and kind of defining those roles and defining training opportunities for folks that are attached to school behavioral supports. But there is I'm not aware of any updated counts since the budget has been passed.
I'll try to look into that because I'm particularly concerned about it because it feels like a lot of the contractual staff to actually do the day-to-day work on school security is potentially being scaled back in schools that need the help the most. So we'll just keep looking at it.
Yeah, in the report that they do say what was this current school year's, the numbers are for counts. That should not be a huge lift to kind of backtrack, but these are for school budgets. as I kind of alluded to a little bit, we've been doing our own, we've been having that in a separate track, our own kind of student safety conversations with students throughout the city. Including that, we've had around 40, this year, we had around 40 focus groups, where we engage with students in all wards. 600 middle schools and high schools who went through the survey process. And in that, we've had some kind of themes that kind of emerged. So community-based violence, gender-based harassment, traffic safety, and we have also grabbed some input on some of the things. So one of the things in some of the early kind of our data, as we're crunching this data, one of the things that we see in the top 5 categories, we see increases. We see increases in community-based harassment, see increases in street harassment, traffic, anger movement, and school-based harassment violence. School-based harassment violence is where bullying generally lies. Community-based harassment is again kind of self-explanatory. It's harassment, violence, being and then gender-based harassment is street harassment, and sometimes for males that looks like the shoe size you're wearing, kind of the checking process. Here to last year, where one of the things that kind of jumped out for us is our behavior improvement numbers. And the big jump is almost 9% jump, and where the kind of jumped, those jumps are great. Generally, we've seen that improvement in our, as something that we were generally labeled into wards 1 and 4. But this time we saw a sizable spike number of folks that are in ward 8 and ward 7. So there's something that we just need to kind of rethink the way we talk about and the way we talk about crews and some of the community-based stuff. Yes. So the 4 years that we've been doing this kind of these surveys and kind of grabs, one of the things that that's ungraded that we need to report out this year is the lowest number of young people saying this. We do these surveys every year. Sometimes we have a large sample, sometimes we have a smaller sample. This is one of the years we have a larger sampling, and only 31% of our students are saying they felt safe, compared to 29% saying they felt concerned, 9% saying they felt afraid, and 3% saying they felt in danger. So we really need to rethink about what we're doing to increase student safety, sense of safety. Even though yes, crime this year is compared to last year, the numbers are going down. That sense of safety has yet to return.
Dan, I don't interrupt the flow of this, but I mean, one thing that's changed dramatically is our SRO program got cut. I think it was 3 years ago now by council. It's never been restored back. I didn't see anything in the report about restoring it back. But I mean, what look was there about the reduced police force's impact on this? Because that's really startling. Because if we're trying to fight truancy and kids are scared to go to school and don't feel comfortable going to school, I mean, that's a problem. So did the committee look at all about kind of the MPD numbers, how the dramatic reduction to MPD is affecting students' perception of safety, both in school and out of school?
So I wouldn't say the committee did that part, but I am familiar with the mayor. She did the school leaders summit, I want to say in March, where it was a follow-up to a school leaders summit she did the previous year. And part of that summit was the commitment to relaunching SROs and have the school leaders really share the need that they want SROs back in the building and kind of value those folks did. In the report, however, they did mention SROs and some of the rebuild there that's kind of needed. Part of the challenge with SROs was when they become funded, all those officers got reassigned. Some retired, not, but they're, when funding has been restored, officers that did want to come back, did come back, but it's still not at the same level as what it was when, before.
It's that first year of council cut that we've never restored back, because like they cut it back that first year. Thankfully, they stopped the second year cut, but people, as you mentioned, had already left. And then some came back when spots opened up through attrition, but we've never got back. And that's the number one thing principals mentioned is the need for more SROs. Particularly privately, they'll mention that. So, I mean,
I think, you know, when we talk to students they generally feel good when police officers are around and are not policing but serving.
Yeah.
So there's not, there's not that, but I also feel, also in the report, one of the things that Diggy mentioned was some of the other models that were used to kind of augment that. One of the things that got flagged was cable model using balancing modules to augment the safe passage, safe block workers. And there was also, mention of some of the teams from Johnson, the way they augmented their safe passage workers with, school staff and kind of other folks in the community. But the overall need for kind of public safety officials to have access to school building is still was something that they were going for. That hasn't necessarily been developed yet.
Was the preposition here going to school, being in school,
So this is their general sense. So the question.
general sense?
The general question is.
In the city.
Right, how do you feel about
How do you feel about going to school?
going to and from school?
So that's some kind of striking graph there. If you look at 23, 24, and the yellow, orange, and red, or whatever colors look like, it takes up about 45% of negativity compared to 21, 22, where you got, it looks like around 80% are in the blue. But that's not really a positive progression. Looks like it's going the other way.
It's going the wrong direction, but it is a reflection of kind of what we see in the city as a whole, as far as violence and crime and just the unease of coming back from the pandemic. I think like you look at 2022, there's a lot of optimism, and then that following year kind of not as much. So one of the things that came out of this year as we all kind of did this kind of advocacy and some all of our school leaders, all of our community interventionists, willing to get in the room with students and school folks to have those conversations. About what can be done, what are common sense solutions to our problems on our block, what are the next steps that we can do to have better communication between one another, what are the things that we're able to kind of move forward within our own power. So we started to have these conversations. We had the first one this past May in Ward 8. We're planning to do more of these throughout the city. We're really looking for more partners, more co-sponsors. It's really an opportunity for us to bring as many folks that are willing to talk about around solutions for what can work in the community to the table. The way we've had it set up is we'll do community cover. We'll have all of our school communities clustered by neighborhood within a ward. We invite those folks out. The public safety officials that are tasked in that ward, libraries, any kind of institution that's in that community, we bring to the table, as well as we bring our student leaders and parent leaders to the table as well to really figure out what are pain points, what are our shared concerns, and really what can be done to this.
You have dates.
We don't have dates quite yet. The only date that is kind of that are somewhat locked in. So we're at 71, and that's would be the second week of August. But the rest of them, part of the reasons why we paused after the May one was because of all of the things from school graduation, some schooling out, some schools, some LEAs, everyone is year round, other LEAs. There's only some folks that are on cultural development team, only be part of that building coming in July. There's a whole host of onboarding trainings, pre-service trainings that occur that we were trying to navigate around and really needed to talk to school leaders on this to build it around their schedule. So we have, the only one that's really locked in is the Ward 7 one. But the other ones, we plan to lock those in as hopefully before the middle of July.
And these are not going to schools to have the conversation, but rather we're inviting people to come to a separate space to talk, right? Like where recruitment and engagement is actually quite hard.
I think, I don't know how quickly this information, because the first one is in early August, which is, just a couple of weeks away.
I know.
And, the mid-August one is, just right after early August. And the early September one is right after the beginning of school. So if we could get, that information at the public meeting,
I think as soon as we can kind of lock the stuff in with the students, as well as locking the space, I think one of the other challenge that we've had with this is finding space that is neutral. Sometimes it will be something in a charter building, CPS food folks won't come, sometimes something in a CPS building, the charter folks won't come, or if they do come, they're not necessarily fully engaged in the space. And so like we did this one at the UDC, Democracy Prep, UDC, the Democracy Prep campus, which is now the UDC Commerce Sites campus. So really finding neutral space that is kind of market access, that is, central to the ward, so everyone can kind of make it, and it's not necessarily, this is for folks that are in Brightwood, or these are the folks that are, in Pepper. We're really trying to get away from some of the neighborhood tribalism that kind of can occur sometimes when we talk about certain communities. Really being in a space where we're talking about all of our problems as a ward, and having those neighborhood conversations.
are you talking about on the weekend or during school day?
Like generally during the
Weekend,
during the evening,
during the evening?
I think one of the weekends in the summer is a hard sell.
I don't know. 6 out of 8 of them got school starts.
So again, folks on the live stream, please give us a call. Our pay line is, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. In addition to that, we'll be producing our annual report that will have some recommendations around student safety, as well as our student safety report that's been called Students Perspective, probably come out around December. If there's things that we can do to connect and be more present in the ward, please let me know. Myself and the team are always willing to come out. If there's not other questions, I think that's it.
There's no other questions, and whether anyone has any group that also from this. But I'm gonna thank Dan and Gloria for coming, to share this working on a meeting. I would also, I think I am remiss, in that highlighting the fact that Dan, Gloria, and Renata, right, came within and accepted an award on behalf of y'all. Advocate, for a lot of it with safety, which is well overdue. So congratulations to you all, and look forward to working with you all going forward. Thank you. Last month, members expressed interest in writing articles for President for Public Education, Kimberly Humphrey, to this working session. I'm going to turn to member Lee to provide a introduction, also highlight and English.
Great. Madam President, thank you, Vice President Thompson, and all the members of the board. This is a presentation of the Ombuds transition update. We have skipped a bit ahead, but before we get fully into our introduction, I just wanted to go over what we'll cover in our time. So you see here our agenda. We'll do introduction, as I mentioned, go over some program highlights for both of our programs, the general pieces, and the DC Special Education Hub. And then we will look ahead at the priorities that we'll be elevating. So, the introduction. Yeah, not too much exciting there, but we just wanted to put that information up for everyone. Many of you have seen my resume, so I won't go through everything. My resume and bio is posted up. But I did just want to say thank you again for having me here. I officially started on April 22nd, and so it's been a little over 2 months. I have been thrilled to be back in the education space, having the opportunity to work with brilliant staff and support students, families, and the school staff. You know, just from reflections, I've been very impressed with the cross-agency community engagement, and we're looking forward to some creative ways to expand our office's presence and representation across the district. As I mentioned, I guess we're a little behind, but my background is in federal and state policy. Most relevant, I spent 7 years doing education policy, among other issues, in Maryland. And that was as legislative counsel at the ACLU of Maryland. So I'm looking forward to having individual meetings as well with each of you to hear your concerns as well as to hear bright spots that are happening in your boards. Before I jump into the YouTube data that we're going to highlight, I did want to turn it over to my esteemed colleague Hannah to say a little bit about herself.
Hey again, everybody. I am Hannah Blumenfeld-Love, just to reintroduce myself. I am the program manager with the DC Special Education Hub, which of course is an initiative of the Office of the Ombudsman. I've been with the office for going on 3 years now, and previously was a special educator in Ward 7.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how big this would be, so I do have my notes here, but I can see this, so that's good. We're going to start with, you know, just a preview of Q2 data. That is the time that I've been here. And so that's April to June 30th. You can see that we had 190 contacts and 152 cases. The distinction there is just oftentimes we may get calls from folks that are trying to reach someone else, or we'll just have to redirect them based on their needs. So you can also see there that cases involving UCPS are at 70%. Those involving charter schools are at 28%, and then the last category is Mount Public at 3%. I've listed all of the wards here, but the highest volume cases are in Ward 7, 8, and 5. I should also mention that I wanted to
Remind me, is that the ward that they go to school or the ward restrictive?
So when we collect the data on both, I believe that this is where it was school. So then I just wanted to give a glimpse of the topics that are the highest volume that I've seen since I've been here. I don't think, you know, based on the conversation previously, not much of a surprise. But we see safety at 33%, special education at 28%, communication and engagement at 13%, academic progress, and discipline and other rounding out those other topics that we see regularly. In addition, in the next few slides, I wanted to break down what's incorporated in the 2 largest subsets there. So first, we're starting with safety. That's at 33%, and the majority of those cases, about half, actually more than half, were bullying. So definitely in line with what we were saying earlier. And then there's a smaller subset that have to do with physical assault between a teacher and a student. And I just want to be clear there that sounds a little alarming, but those are issues of seclusion and restraint and, you know, where a teacher may have to break up a fight or something. So, and then that's a smaller number, a smaller subset. Next slide, please. So the next highest category is special education, and I just wanted to go through a quick breakdown of what some of those issues are. Location of services, or non-public placement, eligibility, and transportation are some of the highest issues that are.
What is location of services?
So that is having to do with where the student is housed for their services, so what school. And a lot of times you'll see concerns or complaints happening in transition years. But we're also seeing a lot of cases where there's just concern about the staffing and what's provided and an interest in changing location of service, which is a very complicated process. And I could probably talk more about that.
What is your degree of authority of students who are in the non-public tuition placements? Do you have authority over those schools in any way?
So, well, our office provides policy guidance, so we technically don't have authority, but this basically DCPS assigns, you know, based on the needs of the student. That's been in my experience, but.
Yeah, so for students who are placed in non-public placements by their LEA, we often do have cases of that nature where we are supporting because it is still a student of a public or public charter school LEA. That's very different from if a student is enrolled by their family in a non-public, which is more outside the scope of our work.
So if a DC student is receiving inadequate services in a non-public tuition placement, there's very little we can do. If they file a complaint, the city's kind of, is there anything, do we have any power if something's really going wrong at that school? I mean, there are kids who are paying for the, you know, the voucher. Do we have any authority at all?
I can just say, the duty is on the school, because they are trying to place the student based on their needs. And in many cases, they are working to do that. Sometimes the staffing issues that really, you know, no one has control over. So I think they try to reassign in those instances. That process is not always quick as families would like. But in cases where we've had to deal with that, we've just tried to make sure that the communication is ongoing, that schools are working with the parent and the communication is moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Next slide. Oh, so before we turn over, just wanted to highlight that that's a short summary of the high trends, and that's, you know, just in the short period that I've been here. You know, we have the upcoming annual report that will analyze the data and the trends for the full year. In addition to the casework, of course, we have the incredible outreach happening in our office via the DC Special Education. And so I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks so much. So we really did want to take an opportunity to celebrate some of the great work that our team has been doing at the DC Special Education Hub. As you all are aware, we started as an initiative of the office in 2022. So we really did just finish our second full school year. Happily, we were able to offer 50 trainings over the course of the school year, and actually were able to train over 1,000 parents, caregivers, and community members in top areas of special education knowledge. We also had over 2,000 touch points with district families over the course of the year. Both of those were actually, we were able to double those numbers from our first school year as an initiative. So we're very, very grateful for all of the support that we've gotten to be able to reach so many more families. over the past school year. We also have maintained a really high family satisfaction rate with over 95% of families recommending the DC Special Education Hub for others in the community with special education questions and concerns. We really look forward to continuing this work and this progress, and we're particularly excited to have Kimberly here now as a partner to really continue this growth and to apply some of the successes that have been happening within the Special Education Hub and broaden them across our entire office.
Yes. Next. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, before we go into the priorities, we are very excited. I just want to kind of restate that, you know, I've been so proud to see the impact that the special education hub is having. And definitely think some of the outreach is a model for the ways that our side of the aisle can show up more. And we look forward to partnering and change, you know, just kind of expanding the way the work is happening in the office. So based on you know, the data and the needs in the community, we have identified our priorities. They include family engagement, bullying and safety, special education, of course, and community schools. And I'll just kind of add, for the bullying and safety, we do, and why community schools is there, we do think that when you are supporting community, you come out with the better safety solution. So we will be looking at partnering with my friends over at OMA to see how we can bring the parent voice to the table and really get some of those community conversations going with a lot of parents that are already very engaged in what's happening with their students. And I'll just say too, for community schools, there was a quick conversation about sort of practices that came up earlier. It really is a data-driven strategy that has been shown to really strengthen school climate. I've worked with partners in the past that have used restorative practices, and as Dan referenced, it is a holistic, you know, school-wide model that really works the best. So we look forward to supporting more conversation about how that can be implemented here.
Is the challenge right now how it's implemented or the resources to implement that all?
I think it's both, and I'll just say that every school, you know, there are different names for the types of programs and partnerships that are going on. There are some technical community schools. Then there are connected schools. The models are different, but it really depends on the robust partnership between the schools and whatever organizations are working with them. You know, sometimes those relationships are stronger at some schools than others, but we were recently at a community schools conference and we met with our DC friends, and they had a lot of good reports, but they did stress that they need more structure in the way the partnerships are built to really have it be implemented more strongly.
I'll just weigh on this to give you the perspective I've heard from parents on it, and it's that, again, if it's like two kids getting in a fight because they had a disagreement about something, yes, that makes sense, you know, because but if it's the persistent bullying, I hear a lot about online bullying, cyberbullying, and the last thing that kids want to do is then sit down with people who've been harassing them and abusing them. And it just kind of furthers the abuse. They don't like it. And then what ends up happening is they call me and say, hey, we're now being asked to do this. And it's uncomfortable. So I'd love to see a place where it actually works well in those situations, because I just haven't heard a lot of positive feedback about that. And yeah, I really do distinguish it between just like that there's an ongoing feud between two groups and it's relatively even balanced. Because in the cases where it's kids picking on another kid, They just want it to stop. They want the principal to get it to stop. They want the parents to get it to stop. And they don't want their student to have to go in and face their bullies. It's just humiliating and embarrassing all over again. So I just really question the effectiveness of this program, and I would love to go to a school where it's working holistically and well and see it in practice. Because I've heard nothing but really negative things about how it's working.
Yeah, so, I would love to share other examples with you.
Okay, I would love to go.
And I'm not promising that that's local. But there's funding issues and there are other, changes that have to happen for it to work well. And I don't think it wouldn't happen overnight. And it's, like I said, the leadership has to be, it's a culture shift in the way that we are addressing problems too. So your point is very well
Okay,
taken.
I'll connect with you afterwards. I would love to genuinely kind of see how it is working in DC. Any place. Okay.
So next slide, we've already begun the Q&A. But we have, we did want to just put our direct information here for you all to make sure that we can, start a dialogue for some, continue a dialogue for others. And I will just open it up here again too, because we have a little bit, I'm just like 3 minutes.
Question that, I found that the, ombudsman's office is so valuable, but that nobody knows about it. What are y'all doing to make sure that at the beginning of school, that there's some signage or something in every school in the city? That lets parents know that they can, who they're gonna call.
Yeah, so we are working on some programmatic tours that will be not for each school, but there are ways that we can probably put material working with TCPS to make sure that every school has that information. But we're also having a campaign around the city, working with our other partner offices
Good.
to make sure that information is out.
Several languages.
Mhm. That is
Especially
a priority.
like Ward 1 and Ward 4, Spanish and Arabic.
So, is there any help that you're looking for from the members right now?
I think that we have a retreat coming up where we'll be getting more into the nuts and bolts of the planning. But in the meantime, I believe meeting requests went out. It might have been around budget time. So we'll be sending those back out, and I look forward to you making some time so that we can just have some conversations about what's happening and what your concerns are. So that concludes our time. Thanks again for having us, and again, look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, American's office for having. Of course, we were excited to be on the president, and look forward to the great work, the office to do every year. Next on our agenda, is the June public meeting channel on that. Remember, which we have, today's December documents, the key highlights from panel. We're not going to read it, to folks, but having the packets and it's posted online. To members have any, comments, reflections, or next steps they would like to raise? Yes.
So the committee, the College Career and Life Readiness Committee is working on a resolution about that, which we have been working on. We wanted to see what came out of this panel to see how we might adjust. And so we are now coming back to the resolution, and I think we should have something to bring to the full board this fall. And I think one of the things that came out of the panel was that there is a lot of consensus about good practices around math instruction. So maybe less need for a task force to identify practices, since we have some good data already. Another reflection that I had was just so that some of the things that the panelists were asking for or valued are hard to do in our system. So one of those being the cross LEA collaboration. That doesn't seem to happen a lot in our system. So the answers are to make that happen better. If there's a better convener, or somehow we can foster that. And the other being, Josh Boots talked about teachers needing room to try things and fail. I think our system offers very little space for that, time or space. So those are just two challenges that struck out to me.
Thoughts about the plan, would be a we'll look forward, to what, committee wants to bring back to the full board. I will note again, that there is like a summary document, and materials for the meeting. If there are delayed, thoughts in the business, feel free, to, you know, show them the committee, or show them, the full board. We do have time for a break. It is 6:15. Let's say 5 minutes on the word, so let's go with 10 minutes, and we will reconvene. Is that fair? Okay, cool. All right, next on the agenda is committee report. Where we'll provide an update, followed by any member questions. Into my three. Hoping that's true today. We do have one request, from Representative Channing, one of the committee report, which is that on business. We can present at the ANC meeting, which I think is fair. In college career and life readiness first, and then, admin, educator, excellent, excellent, and engagement. So I'm coming to you, Representative.
Thank you. So one of the things that the committee decided to bring to the full board is a proposal for a kindergarten teacher literacy engagement event. And I'm going to have Representative Chang fill in the details.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. So, as you know, we got the funding request and the legislation through to actually start the implementing the recommendations from OSSE's Early Literacy Task Force. And one of the things that the educators that I've been speaking to have been highly recommending is getting a chance to bring the kindergarten teachers who are the focus of this first year together so that we can actually get their feedback and get their buy-in and implement this with fidelity, knowing that there's a lot of different stakeholders involved with this actual implementation, and it's important that we all start to work together to actually make this work. As you can imagine, my top focus right now is just, we got the money, how do we spend it right? And how do we make sure that we are doing the absolute most we can with this opportunity? And so the way that I would think about this is I think like most things, it would need to start a little bit like a stone soup, right? So if we put a stake in the ground and say DC SBOE wants to host this, we have approval from board members to host an event, then that gives us the capacity to be able to go to the other agencies and say, would you join too? Right? And I don't think, I think it's harder to bring them on board before we say we would like to try to host this. So my ask to the board members is to have your blessing to start that planning process, but then also think about, I think there is a budget ask that comes with it. Just very informally, there is buy-in. I have heard buy-in from representatives of OSSE, WTU, right, individual schools, so come and be a part of this and help us convene. And we would need a space, right? So being able to pay for a space that could have enough, right? I mean, we would want as many of these stakeholders, and particularly kindergarten instructors, to be able to join us. Would be the ideal, right? And so being able to put that into motion this fall is the ask. Yes.
I was curious, like, so do you have a date or like at least a day of the week that you were trying to shoot for? Because
I do not. No, I mean, I think it's the way that I was thinking about it is, if you all say yes, then we can start actually planning. Because I mean, a lot of that will depend on when the partners will be free, right?
In your space.
And when the space is free.
We say fall, I mean, so fall's always tricky because of,
So tricky, yeah.
and so I'm thinking a budget ask for this people currently in, so pre-October, like that matters. Pre-October, or if they already think of budget ask for post-October.
Jackie, WTU Jackie says was recommending that we do it before October. Just to capture the sort of energy at the beginning of the year, and acknowledging that that is actually really hard because there's so many things happening at the same time. But my understanding is we still have funds left over in this fiscal year. It would be nice if we could use that for this.
Like how many, I get what, so in your head, what does success look like
Uh,
as far as attendance?
Yeah, so my understanding is like one of the spaces that I was looking at was the NLK library rooftop space, which I think is $1,000 to rent out and 500 people. I don't think we will, up to 500 people, right? And you can shape the space differently based on who actually comes.
Why aren't you thinking about before school?
Because the teachers wouldn't be back yet.
No, the teachers are back before school starts.
Before actual class stuff,
Right.
the kids. The actual details of when, I think the only decision that actually matters now is whether we do it in this fiscal year or later. And then I would love to get your advice on how soon you do it, right? Because again, timing actually matters. The most important thing to me is, are our partners available and is there a space available, and we will plan. Right.
I just, as a teacher, and who's obviously interested in literacy, but also hates staff development that doesn't have anything to do with teaching. Seems like something that would really be exciting to my son, who's a kindergarten teacher right now. That he would be able to go to a staff development or an event that would be very helpful to him as an educator. I was, every now and then would go to something that was really helpful to me as an educator, rather than some outside person telling me that it had nothing to do with my skills. I'm all for it. If you need a vote, a vote.
And is there a? Yes, like, so maybe who will be? So like, you're saying there's not in but like, are there certain partners that are like absolutely needed? To do this all, or?
We absolutely needed kindergarten instructors. Plural, right? I think the ideals, right, would be awesome. So that we are building, I mean, part of what makes an effective implementation is bridging that gap between who is actually implementing the policies and the people who implement, right? And so being able to build the relationships between the literacy team that also has to implement with the actual kindergarten teachers would be very, very helpful. I think absolutely having the WTU there would be really nice as well. And school administrative leaders, right, LEA leaders, principals, would be helpful as we think about, okay, what is the best way for us to actually implement this? And I think success, though, for me would be, we have, DC SBOE has the relationships with as many kindergarten teachers as possible. So we have the direct feedback loops to be able to do our job, which is to be your voice in public education. As OSCE is implementing this new legislation that is passed and spending the funds, we have immediate and direct feedback loops that we can actually then provide to the folks who are implementing.
I wanted the size.
Yes.
I think in my neighborhood, and I'm not sure what be successful with that, but I am chewing on what it looks like what's needed from OSCE and how much we can get done in partnership with OSCE, right? Like that's just a bit of a black box question.
Well, okay, so it's not that I haven't thought about the event at all. But I think part of it is I haven't been necessarily getting into the weeds because I know we have a lot of options depending on who the partners are. But I do think that part one that is actually interesting to a lot of kindergarten instructors is, what is the new legislation? How does this affect me? Right? And so being able to actually present that is the best suited partner to do that is awesome, right? And so being able to first provide information that folks can ask questions, learn more about what the actual changes are for them, and it won't be next year, right? It'll be for the subsequent year. But being able to actually have that conversation and learn more about what this is part one. And then after that, I think it's, being able to, being able to then move from information Q&A to getting more feedback and creating those feedback loops with educators, building the relationship. To close that again.
Concept makes sense to me. Similar to how we always talk about like implementation on the other, like it is probably about how we let them decide. It's probably about clear as mud to me. What Austin has on the free, how they plan on navigating the transition.
Right.
What contacts and resources will be available, and
Yep.
even if it will affect some of the work bodies moving forward. Like if some of those things are shifting, I think it's shifting, from what is previously expected.
Which is why I don't think of them as necessary,
Right.
right? I think
I
it's,
just want to be as, honest as I can be.
Yeah.
With what we don't know
yes,
and making sure that it's still worthwhile.
Yep.
And still accomplishes what you want to set out. It's not an argument, it's more like just a FYI. As we are considering how to do this, some of the considerations are the following.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely,
So your goal is to inform and get feedback.
yes.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Which I think is step one in getting buy-in to actually implement. Yeah.
And I just want, for my clarification, the reason is you're doing the kindergarten teacher because that is the first.
That is all that's included in the legislation.
Yeah, okay.
Because I was thinking some of the early childhood folks might want to sneak in just to see what's happening at the next level. And we have such a robust early childhood network in DC.
Yes. Okay, so.
I think we're gonna turn away anyone who's not using it in kindergarten.
No, I wasn't suggesting that. I was just saying to get you to that 500, there's an interest. There's interest for sure.
So it's the question now before, quote unquote, the full board that's here to like make a decision on whether you want to move forward or not.
So I don't know how we do this formally with a budget ask, right? Is it that I then actually for the public session come with a quote? Or
No,
how do
so,
I?
so it's an engagement event.
Yep.
Roma can do all this stuff back in the house.
Okay.
The budget ends September 30th.
Okay.
We have purchasing, we can. If you're gonna do it this fiscal year, I would suggest you do it before September 15th.
Okay.
So that is a guarantee that the bill comes before September 30th. Because if you hold an event in September, but they don't send us the invoice until October 5th, it will come out of next year's budget. So like, but there is like. The money is available, I should say that, to make this a reality, and there's no constraints in that, and it's just a constraint in terms of timing.
Okay, understood.
Then there are some places like MLK, because we are a government agency, like. For you to get the space by yourself, maybe $2,000, it would be another price for like a DC government agency.
Even better, great.
So I would say once the board decides whether or not to move forward with the idea, I would suggest that we set up a planning meeting with me, Roma, and whoever else on the board to begin to lay out a plan in terms of partners, in terms of step by step, and then you create a timeline to bring it to fruition.
Yep, sounds good.
Do you need to vote?
Yes.
I move that we support the kindergarten literacy engagement session.
In favor.
Opposed?
Thank you, guys.
Is that the whole committee report?
No.
I was thinking of
I got a little bit.
As I voted on. we also discussed the resolution on legacy and donor mission preferences, which we will talk about in business. That was a good portion of our meeting. We also discussed work on graduation requirements. Given that we got the timeline from Aussie at the last working session on their work, we don't think we can do parallel engagement on the profile. We want to go ahead and start working on topics that are relevant to the graduate requirements. So we're going to start identifying topics that we think will be the most contentious. That's just maybe not the right word, but the decision points that we might have related to graduation requirements, so that we can identify those and try to do some deeper engagement and investigation in advance of Aussie's timeline, so we're ready when they propose things to us. We are continuing, Representative Best is doing outreach to other DC agencies on AI and education. And we all agreed to support his outreach. And we are, as I said before, we're working on a draft for a math resolution, incorporating what we learned from him last week.
Questions, comments, from your report?
All right, Chair, thank you. We had our meeting, this June 28th. The attendees that we had was myself, President Thompson, Representative Freer, Lay, Bernice, Director, and Kimberly. The highlights is that the committee discussed the virtual August back to school engagement and settled on, since it had come to the admin committee, and settled on August 5th, beginning at 5:30 and ending at 6:30. The committee discussed working with DME to include State Board of Education in the 2024 back to school guide. We also, the committee discussed the lack of cost of living increases. One of the biggest issues is like the situation of the employees of the State Board of Education and them getting cost of living increase and how that works in the city and stuff like that. We were interested in how they go years without getting any type of increase to match things. So it's a discussion that we're going to keep going. We're trying to figure out how to speak to that, because we do appreciate all the work that they do. And we think that, you know, as cost of living going up, inflation, those things like that, that we need to look at making sure that we get increased and adjust to what it's like to work in this the job so well. So that was a robust conversation that we had. The offices we all had, and we've had some of the people come here today, so I won't reiterate it. You can read it here, but we had the ombudsman in the office. They also gave their briefing. And we also had the student advocate as well. Of course, always the director for us gave her update. So they're here in the report itself. For those online, they can see them, but that is it. Madam President, I don't know if there's any questions from my peers. Yes.
I don't think it was, did you mention the scheduling of the meeting that we're going to be doing? The engagement session?
Yes, August 5th.
August 5th, okay.
Yeah, August 5th. So the back to school engagement is settled on August 5th, and we're from 5:30 to 6:30.
So August 5th is a Monday.
Yes.
I need to have, I don't know what the virtual back to school engagement is.
The discussion that we had is that we want to have some type of engagement as opposed to having a real meeting and everything like
I
that.
thought that was, oh, Okay,
So it became an engagement. He decided last week that. it
So
was an
that's the-
engagement.
that's
that
in lieu of
That's correct, sir.
the public meeting. It's gonna be 2 days before the work session.
It's an engagement, yes, it's an
Okay.
engagement.
Okay.
Since we decided there would be no voting or anything like that, so it's strictly engagement about before school.
Okay.
And if there are specific takeaways that come out of the background, are specific, next steps or things elevated that would require discussion, action. Next steps from the board gives folks the opportunity to have that on the table at the work discussion. So that's how
And that should be, because the summer blitz should be hopefully finished by then, since they're working on that now. For the different schools being, taken care of,
As far as,
as far as the
their
buildings.
buildings and things like that, because I did see, this, I thought it was George, that was George put out her presentation and stuff like that, but I think they maybe that.
Well, I talked to somebody at DGS yesterday about it, they're working on it now. But I just would encourage members to, bring information to this engagement session about what's not going on relative to school.
Representative,
Representative Gillette.
I was just gonna say, and this Representative Boulder, you should give us time if there are things that aren't fixed yet to then still follow up with DGS, get it
Right.
fixed. So the thinking was most of the blitz work should be done already, but if there is a punch list of items that parents aren't satisfied with, we still then have about 2 weeks before school really gets going again, to try to get those last minute things. And we had issues like this last year with air conditioning. I mean, there was a couple buildings like Man last year didn't have air conditioning. In some of the pre-K rooms that even though it was supposed to have been fixed. So things like that, I think we can get ahead of and get done. So I want to commend Representative Patterson for picking a date that I think works to get those things achieved, hopefully. Hopefully it'll be a success.
I wish I could take all of that, but I appreciate you for making sure that we pick the right day, but I appreciate that, sir. Were there any other questions?
No, I think, well, it's not a question, I would just say that the next steps in terms of action items is for now that we have to stay, there's no objection to it, right? To begin to put together advertisements, on social media, and be sure to, represent over there, like, if you, like specific things around schools. We will tailor the campaign to the type of concerns that we want people to bring to the city.
So much. That'd be it.
Thank you, for the admin committee report. Happy to move on to educator excellence. I believe I'm coming to represent the board.
You can read this, I don't have to read it to you. We're still in a sort of planning stage for, what we're going to work on. And if you look at the last bullet, we discussed a possible research project on teacher induction programs, better understand the different programs that, such as Teach for America and City Year, that DC teachers participate in before and during their teaching careers, because we want to concentrate on how to help new teachers stay so that we don't have to work as much with teacher retention. We'll bring more information to you. August session.
Any comments, questions? On the educator excellence? I think Representative Boulder, I am coming to student experience and engagement, but I do not see Representative Williams. I don't know if someone else who can.
I'm recording it.
Happy to, thank you, Representative Green.
Cool. So the the C committee met on Monday, June 24th, and those officers were present. Darren gave us the final everyday counts task force information. We spent the bulk of our time talking about the committee of the wholes, meeting on attendance, or excuse me, hearing on attendance. And members kind of chimed in on a variety of things related to that topic, whether it be maintenance, environments, the impact on safety. Just a reminder for the board and the public that the public comment for that will still be open if you have thoughts, after participating or listening to that hearing. Representative Williams mentioned that the educator workforce data will be available in late summer 2024, so we have our eyes peeled for that. Representative Goulet mentioned that there might be a good time to, again, reach out to the chancellor with the WTU contract negotiations, based on the educator data. Our next committee meeting is Tuesday, July 30th. That concludes the report.
Questions, comments? Student experience and engagement.
So, you all are preparing scope of work for a research project that will be bid out this fiscal year?
Yes, thank you. That's the point that, so yes, we looked at questions, related to those topics for the upcoming research project. And the main focus was safety and chronic absenteeism as a possibility. And the topics included were how each stakeholder defines their roles in terms of safety, because it's a lot of, not inconsistency. I don't know if we, as well as the public, know the difference between each roles. Like, what's the role of a safe passage worker? What's the role of, violence interrupter versus MPD versus this, that. So that was one question. The relation to building maintenance and school environment on safety and chronic absenteeism, perceived impacts of school safety interventions. So we're implementing certain things like SROs. This, is there perception of that people in the building actually feel safe when given those things? Student feedback on certain approaches or activities or positions. What else? Students' experiences over the summer, as well as returning back to school, and then engagement and connectedness with school curriculum. Basically making, school, maybe some absenteeism is happening because students don't feel like they belong, or the curriculum isn't exciting or engaging. And those are the 6 bullet points under bullet point 3. If anybody wants to look exactly what we came up with research topics.
So is the bid for, someone to write the report? Is the bid for engagement and research? Is the bid for?
Eric, do you recall?
I think it was more on the research side of things. That's what I thought. I didn't think it was that we thought we'd be far enough along to write a report.
I could fill you all in. So
Thank you.
actually, a major update today was the statement of work went out
Okay.
for a survey. And we were trying to meet, you all asked, about whether we can break up the research.
Mhm.
Since part of it is falling in FY 24, part of it FY 25, we can
Okay.
actually do that. And so we reached out, asked for a quote
Mhm.
on the statement of work for a survey going out the first few weeks of school.
Mhm.
Close it, but not analyze the data, just help us develop a survey, distribute it, and then clean up the data and get that to us.
Mhm.
And then FY 25 help us build out that report. And
Is there, so. That work plan for this?
No,
Okay.
right?
it's on the
We have a
work
work
plan.
plan? Okay.
Like
For that exact thing though, we just talked, those
So-
steps you just.
I'll take a second. So, I'm asking, for a couple reasons. One, because, I think this is helpful background. So when we, did the healthy school facilities report, and we created a work plan, did everything we possibly did, to get a vendor, given especially all the things we have to do as a small agency, for procurement things, it took a lot longer than we anticipated, not due to any fault of, but just due to the mechanics of DC government. And so I am asking if there's a work plan, because I can appreciate breaking it out, and figuring out what could be split across fiscal years, but I also think it's really important, to make sure that we're realistic with the timing in case most of it ends up falling into the next fiscal year. Yeah.
So we would just be collecting data during the Oh, yeah, because it ends on September 30th. So that would be like a survey that would have to happen like the first 2 weeks of school.
That's the first,
Like, are you surveying students, parents, residents of the district, like, who does the survey?
So we're doing different surveys for different populations.
yeah, so I shared out the statement of like a draft. I shared out a draft last week, and so it's targeting based on feedback from just past working sessions and our committee,
With the committee.
with the committee.
But that's not in our material. Is it?
It's-
Like for today's.
It's not. What I could do is make sure to get that out to the wider board, but it's targeting students, parents, school leaders, and like anyone dealing with safety within the school. A lot of that is actually in the DME's safety report, like how to identify that and what that looks like. And then it focuses on what's in here, what's in the committee report. It like focuses on those questions and it would align through, but yeah, I can share that with the board. Along with like a timeline for what that would look like.
That would be super helpful.
It wouldn't be the first week of school though, because it's crazy.
Well, and the first week of school is different for different.
Yeah.
Exactly. It wouldn't, for DCP, it's not following like DCPS.
Yeah. So in my head, when you say fiscal year, that means you're stopping October, or you're stopping September 30th. So what could happen before September 30th? That was the question about it.
But
When we go across fiscal years.
yeah, so it'll be helpful. I think that's the right next step to see like the timeline and work out of work because I talk about the details and I don't know it.
Mhm.
Because like, just like we talked about with the event, how like some stuff is coming back, you gotta get that by September 15th, you gotta get that by September 5.
Yeah.
I want us to be able to back into what has to be parsed out. Yeah, that would be really helpful. Other questions? I'm sorry, I have one more question.
So what's the intention of the research? Is the goal to put a set of policy recommendations, or just, you know, like, what is the point? Like, at the end of the day, you get representative sample and you get all this information in, are you looking to, what are you gonna do with that information?
I ask those questions all the time. I think this one was supposed to be filling in gaps that the other reports did not have. I'm looking at Darren because this is like
Yeah.
old information
Yeah.
we talked about a while ago. So
And-
it's the filling
and-
gaps that aren't answered for the other report.
Yeah, and I don't wanna like stay, if any other members wanna talk, but what we were discussing was filling in those gaps. So, for example, Dan just presented on their survey, but that will be closed by the start of the school year. This is really focusing on what happened over the summer, what's going on, the first few weeks of school, and then like filling in those gaps. So some of the questions might be similar, and others will look at just.
This is also jogging my memory because we were talking about possibly, because I think I raised a similar question about, I don't like doing a lot of extra surveys and researching either, but we were talking about that last bullet point about student engagement related to connectedness with school and curriculum, because we have not collected information, I don't believe, about like what do students feel as valuable experiences in school to like make them want to come and engage and how we're rethinking the education. So that's, I think, where I was kind of like, yeah, let's look at that because we did so many safety. So like look at gaps, but I really believe that last topic was because we're going to get into that whole profile work. I believe we're getting into the profile work and possibly graduation requirements. We're possibly trying to collect information on what do students value related to their education so that we can use it to inform the buckets of work related to graduate profile and possibly graduation requirements.
I mean, I think one thing, I appreciate sharing that, but the one thing that I think is valuable to this, and I wanted to support that committee chair, in what he was bringing forward, is, we just saw data that only 31% of our students feel safe. And I think what might be helpful, and particularly as we're going back to school, is to understand what makes them feel unsafe, like trying to drill down a little bit. and then see what's different between different wards and different schools. Because like, what makes kids maybe feel unsafe in Ward 3 to the degree that they do may be different than, you know, what a student in Ward 8 may be feeling. And then some students, maybe, it may be on the commute, it may be on WMATA, where these issues are coming up. So to me, that's valuable. And then to find out from students, maybe what would make them feel more safe. Like if we find out what the problems are, maybe it's something as simple as that, you know, they need a crossing guard. Maybe it's a traffic issue where they don't feel safe getting across the street. Maybe it's something where they're being bullied and we need to deal with that. So I think there's value in this. I think we've got to just try to make sure that as we execute it, we're getting data that's just not duplicative of what we
Yeah,
already
we
have.
definitely mentioned duplicative data, and we also mentioned that some of the information may possibly be in Dan's report. So that's what we're trying to,
Yeah, asking questions that aren't already
Yes.
asked, I think.
and I remember tagging on the piece, yes, asking questions that aren't, haven't been asked about safety. That haven't been like in what the student advocate did, because Dan actually went to schools at each ward. I got to see mine for my ward. But we were also talking about, how to make things different, is possibly looking at like that whole experience, student experience situation, where like, where they value their education. Because some of those questions that you just raised, Representative Goulet, I think I have a feeling somebody has data on that.
And Representative Reed, you and I are kind of, you know, discussing this. I think Representative Williams can kind of give a good overview of kind of
Yeah.
what his thoughts are, because I think he was championing this idea. I mean, we wanted to support it because we felt like there could be value to it, but I think the value is going to be in what we ask. I think you emphasized at the committee meeting the need not to duplicate, you know, pre-existing efforts. And so I think that the true value of it will be in, are we gathering new data? Is it relevant to the start of school? And then how do we use it to help our kids feel safer? I'm particularly concerned because we're trying to reduce truancy. The data we're seeing here shows that if kids don't feel safe going to school, they're going to stay at home. So I think there's a lot of work we can do on this. We just got to make sure the questions are written the right way, and we get a sample set that's useful.
Yeah, and just one more thing to piggyback on that, the DME's Everyday Counts task force recommendations will also be coming out. And part of this and part of the conversations that we've been having in our committee is where the state board fits in with this. I know coming into 2025, just one of the things that our work plan is recommendations for the incoming board based on this survey, Office of Student Advocates work, so on and so forth. Also built into the statement of work, similar to past focus groups and surveys, is inviting in partner agencies to review the survey. So it's not going out, it's not doing anything duplicative that they're already working on. So there's multiple, a lot of things are coming out of this. It's recommendations for the state board, but also for partner agencies and how we can better integrate ourselves with the work around safety, student experience, chronic absenteeism.
Something to do something. Is it still there? To say that it would be helpful, see the breakdown of kind of like what's proposed. I would assume that would include kind of some directionality and like what we want to ask in the same place and not the timeline, and that can be shared out for folks to just digest a little bit. Because it does sound like, as you said, a lot of things could come out of this. So,
The good news is it's not out for bid, but maybe it's just out for quotes from like 2 vendors that we've worked with in the past.
Market research.
And so let me get that and I will share out a link to the SharePoint version for you all to look at, provide feedback, and maybe build in for myself, maybe a better schedule and also a work plan of like executing this survey. So it's not just rushed out the door and done poorly.
Thank you, Darren.
all right, any other questions? Is that the full committee report?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I believe that our final board committee report, are there any external committee reports?
the Environmental Literacy Advisory Group, met and heard from Department of Employment Services about their plan, their strategic plan to move forward with student jobs and promoting good jobs. I can share that out if people are interested in it. But we had asked their in-person office to. Yes.
All right, moving us on, to public meeting panel as a reminder to members of the public. Our working session will include this item when we vote on public meeting panel topics. 2 months before each meeting, tonight we will focus on potential panel topics for our September public meeting, followed by vote. Every Monday, our policy fellow email out the roundup for items in that email with 2024 public meeting panel topics. As we advance, we will discuss and vote on the panel topics generally in the session. If no topics have been proposed to the tracker, the floor will be open for suggestions. And if no topics are given, there will be vote not to have a panel for that month. There are no panel suggestions in the tracker for September. I don't think anyone added any since I sent a reminder earlier today. Are there September public meeting suggestions? And actually, let me, before we get to December, I don't see the last for, but I want to make sure it's all about July.
Yeah, so the board technically voted on July.
Oh, I know, I just want to keep it up, so I don't see that in the balance, if there's something else for. All right, let me back up. In July, for July, there was a vote in May about the July meeting topic. There has been a substantial amount of difficulty securing panelists for the July meeting topic. To refresh folks' memory, the panel about the health, specifically the ideas from Representative O'Leary and Representative Washington. To date, OSSI is not, has pretty much said that they don't have anything to participate in the panel. Because they're not able to confirm any other candidates. That was what I was told.
As of yesterday, did not, but apparently we were able to confirm 2 this morning.
Okay, we have 2 this morning. So I want to make sure the board is aware of this update. I don't know if folks had suggestions for additional folks we should be reaching out to. We are making an assumption that it's probably but we are making an assumption that given it is July, and education folks tend to not want to do a bunch in July. That is part of the difficulty we are having here, due to folks' vacations and other things. We also cannot have a public meeting panel in July. But before their decision is made, I want to make people aware of where we are for the July.
Yeah, I'm fine if it's okay with the membership, to shift that panel to September if we find that we have trouble getting folks. I would just like to ask, Director Butler, who are the ones we were able to confirm?
Yes. So, we were able to confirm a parent from Pay, Anna Rodriguez, and someone from DCPS, the Director of Student Health Services.
Okay. I think one thing that might be helpful is to reach out to our nurses union, particularly on the school nurse side, if we're able to, because I think they can have some feedback. I've been very disappointed, and the parents in my ward are very concerned about this, floating nurse pool model. It's not working effectively at all. It's really, I think, exacerbating attrition issues within our school nurse program, and no one's really happy about the effectiveness of it. So. And there's also a real concern about just trying to substitute allied health professionals with, actual school nurses. Parents don't think it's a substitute. They want to have a full-time 40-hour-a-week school nurse in every public school. So if we can get either some public health experts in that area or some folks associated with school nursing in DC who are experts in the concerns about this. I think it would be beneficial if we have trouble getting those folks retained for the panel. I think punting it until June would be good. I do know that Representative Washington, I think, was going to try to make it before she went to college though, and had some other issues she was exploring, I think related to, I think it was athletic training or something of that sort. I don't want to speak for her, but I would like to give her the opportunity, if possible, to be able to participate before she goes to college.
Well, she'll be here in the district. She's going to Howard.
Oh,
That would be hop, skipping and jumping.
but she may be participating from the other side of the dais at that time, so, but either way.
I have spoken to, within the last 48 hours, 2 people who would like to be on the panel. I didn't know we were short of people on the panel. So, I'm gonna go ahead and try to recruit a couple, because I think this is urgent. And it needs to be, just as when I was talking about publicizing the student advocate and ombudsman. A lot of people don't understand that there isn't a nurse in every school. Having a nurse that's in charge of 4 schools or whatever doesn't help those students as we talk. The students talk to us this year about that on a different panel. So why don't at least give me until the end of the week to see if I can fit at least 2 more. Or anybody. I don't have to take it on, so.
Yeah.
I've already talked to 2 people that's semi-committed. But they were going to get in touch with signing up.
To testify.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I think I'm sharing for this reason, so folks know where we are in this, in what's been secured and what hasn't been, what's been confirmed and what hasn't been. So if those are folks that, I mean, it was you and Representative Washington, to be the panel, so if there are additional on the panel, that's great. But I wanted to make sure that we raised it, so folks know what we were securing.
Oh, I appreciate it. So can we just stick a pin in it for till the end of the week?
Karen's leading the organization of this panel. We won't be in office for the rest of this week, but I mean, if you have updates for us
Okay,
early next week.
okay. That's great.
Especially if you have contact information, I'm happy to reach out to them. We have 2 students who showed interest, as well as Taya offered another person to really speak to defibrillators in schools, and she showed interest, so I'm just waiting for confirmation of it.
Okay,
But the nurses unions,
so we might line up with 2 many people on the panel. Right?
we definitely, I would love to have a nurse sitting on the panel. And it's been challenging to get to find one.
Thank you for the productive conversation about the live. Back to September.
I have an idea on September, but I don't know if it's big enough to justify having this panel. I've received a lot of feedback and concerns, both from teachers and some parents and students about this policy, which I guess was put in place during COVID to allow the delay of submission of work up until like really the very last day of school, and teachers then having to grade and track all of this work. I don't know if anybody else has been following this issue at all, but it was a change in policy where teachers basically have to take work from students that they will submit well after any sort of reasonable deadline. And I think it's creating a lot of issues. It's forcing teachers to then have to grade all this work right before the last day of school. I don't think it's good for students to develop bad habits like this, where they're basically allowed to procrastinate on their work and then submit it all at once and still get credit for it. So I don't know if that's worth exploring. I'd like to know more about it. I saw and had some back and forth with people on this issue. So I think it's just something, if there's no other ideas for a panel, that I would be interested in taking a look at, because it actually is something within our purview to change if it's a problem. I don't know if anybody else has seen this at all, but
This is DCPS policy.
yes.
I'm not familiar with this.
Yeah, I forget the name of it. There's like a term of art.
I haven't heard since like the beginning of the pandemic about it, but I haven't received any like complaints recently.
I think one of the things we could consider, as we ahead of knowing work is coming, it's just some examples from, or some kind of that helps people understand like why writing profiles are important. Because theory, is my perspective at least, the profiles should also align to not just like what's going to pass in the hospital, but should align with everything else. And so kind of having some level setting the public or just giving some ideas for us to be thinking about what the opportunities are, how other states maybe have done this, where we see success, and also just giving us ideas around maybe like who we should be engaging, and where we can get some fruitful ideas ahead of this work, since it hasn't really got to us in full yet. Might be a time.
If we are hybrid in September, we could invite leaders from other states to talk about the work that they've done.
We're not hybrid. But that as well, but if we are not, we definitely also have some, there's enough national organizations located here who would be familiar with that type of work to get us to that just one.
I'd like to offer an alternative in that, I'd like to have a panel on a follow-up to the opening of schools. How are the different, agencies handling the opening of schools? Because when we talk about truancy and, attendance problems, we're meeting the third week of September, which means schools have been meeting for 4 or 5 weeks already. And everybody should know what their attendance is, what the problem is, or what the numbers look like. I'd like to hear from DCPS and from the charter schools about what that looks like right now, third week of September. And other issues, building maintenance, those kinds of schools. But that might be an October panel too. We really are, if we're talking about chronic problems in attendance and truancy, those things need to be stopped at the gate rather than in the middle of the race. I like your idea.
The only other idea I can think of is just continuing to keep the focus on this teachers union contract issue, like having another panel on that. Because we're now almost another year outside of having a valid contract in place. And I know it would just be repeating the same issues as before, but I think every time we give an audience to this, it raises the level of discussion and visibility of it. And we moved a resolution last October on this. And there's been no contract movement for a full year almost. And we'll be a year outside having a valid contract again. And I think it's really hurting retention. So I mean, that's just another topic. I know it's probably harping on the same issue, but I think it's one of the biggest impediments to trying to, keep morale high in our schools and to retain our teachers is just this contract issue. But, we'll probably have the teachers union and a lot of the same witnesses that we had the last time. So it's just another thought. Like, I'm not wedded to either of my ideas, but I'm just trying to throw things out there because it sounds like we don't have anything that's really lighting the fire for a public panel. Not that you both didn't have good ideas, but I just, I didn't see like anyone should stand up and cheer for anything. It's just a thought.
They're 2 months out.
If we vote for no panel, can we then come back a month from now and then if somebody gets a good idea, then we can just put that in place rather than put a placeholder that we're not really enthused about? Because we still could do it next month. We have an August working session.
I like that idea because I think it will give us time just in case there's some massive boom in September where 30 witnesses show up to advocate or 50 on something that happened, start of school year. It just opens us up for, and also just hold space for if there's an emergency and we do need a panel for. So I like that idea personally.
Because we're not precluded from reconsidering our prior decision, so we could go with no panel and then just pick something.
Because my silence is more that I don't know the answer to that. Given I don't think there are any provisions that I'm aware of, but
Their SOPs and all bylaws.
yeah. So there, like I said, there are SOPs, so they aren't necessarily as binding. The operations can always change. So you can vote to have no panel. I would suggest that people, if you vote to have no panel, then there's no panel unless something urgent comes up. Or just say you want to say, like, push the decision to the August working session, which are 2 different things.
Could I make a motion at this time to postpone the vote on this matter until the August working session so that we're not voting to have no panel, but we're doing a motion to postpone the vote until August for selection of the September public panel?
Second.
Sure.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded.
Okay. It's okay. All right, Harvey moved to second, all in favor? You opposed? So it sounds like we have a majority, in favor of moving it. So we're gonna postpone the vote to the next working session. I would encourage, and if you have delayed, reactions to any of the things that were from the table this evening, I would also just know that that vehicle and the tracker is, available to everyone, to start to put things together. Okay, new business. We have a few items for new business, a couple of them are modified based on the changes. But the committee reports earlier, so, what we have on the list so far is they were priority items for us in transition. Graduate profile engagement, SBOE academic excellence awards for graduates. We no longer need to discuss, the kindergarten teacher literacy engagement event. And that's on 24-16, calling for an end to legacy and donor and mission practices in post-secondary education. Are there any other items, for new business that are not on our list?
I have a couple, but I know I have to leave at 7:30 for 8 o'clock meeting. But I just want, I guess, maybe I can follow members via email. So I wanted to put on microphone. I'm curious if we should maybe do a document related to like parent engagement. maybe like a memo or something like friendly reminders or reminders to like our agency partners for best practices for engaging with parents in the sense of there's a lot of referring people versus helping people. So I have two parents, one parent who testified at our last public meeting, the parent from a military family, and all the ping pong that she encountered. And then after her, I think I had two more parents in my email. So I was just looking at the email chain myself and I was confused. So a vehicle for something to just say like, hey, I don't know, best practice. I'll send an email and just send your thoughts on what you think feel is in our lane, is not our lane. But I think we need to say something to our agency partners about how when people call issues, how those are handled. The other one was there was an email related to adult education for maybe migrant populations where there was like an undercover investigation. It was like 6 or so high schools that a student was denied entry, even though I think they might have rights to. So I'm curious, like, our thoughts as a board related to that. And then the third one, I'll hold on to the next meeting because I don't think it's like something like this imminent. So I'll email you all those, excuse me, because I have to run. But look forward to your feedback.
They were priority items for off the transition. But again, if there are not aware of other questions around the regulatory power, ask the question, but I want to raise again, if there are other things that could or should be on the table. Representative Button.
One thing I'd like to just emphasize is making sure that, whoever is coming on board, there's not any loss of capacity on the special ed transportation issue. Because I really am very fearful that we're at risk of a receivership there. We struggled. I think we got better the last year and made improvements. But what I don't want to see is during the transition, somebody new coming on board who doesn't understand the urgency of that. Because what we don't want to do is end up losing, our self-governance of our own special ed transportation program again, because there's some sort of leadership vacuum or just something gets dropped in the process. So anything that we can add to any transition memo to reiterate our seriousness about having a effective special ed transportation program, I think is important.
So the goal is to develop, or at least go to get some type of transition document, which documents like the scope of work and the different things. So would it be, are you asking for OSCE to share with us, like, any further plans? Or are you asking for us to communicate with OSCE that this remains important to us?
I think if we're looking at transition on this, just making sure that it's at the top of the list of things that they're focused on. If it's not relevant to the search, I think, just at least examining somebody and asking questions about that this is something that we want somebody to have a skill set that they can do. Because I think it's one of the top things OSCE has struggled with the last couple of years. And having somebody at least be aware of the issue and with the capacity to address it, I think is important. So however you want to, phrase it, if you don't think it fits, that's fine too. But I think it's something that, I would ask the new superintendent to focus on. So.
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't want to put a square peg in a round hole though.
No, I don't think it's that restrictive. I just want to make sure I understand the best ask and the best people. So I hear state transportation. Are there other things?
I think it's incredibly important. We're gonna meet with the new superintendent of next business.
I don't know the answer to that. I know that OSCE is coming, so I know, and I believe this is shared with the board, that OSCE is coming to our August working session.
Right.
I do not know if that means the interim superintendent will be there. We have not, leadership met with the interim superintendent, we will not have that meeting until next week. One of the things that, I am sharing at that meeting is that you hope that the interim, puts aside some time to have, to reach out to the board members and those types of things, but there is, we do not have any detail. Whether it is around the search itself, whether it is around, work items and how they are affected, or whether it's around shifts, in contacts, for specific things. We don't, there's very little, information shape detail to what that looks like, so I do not know any more to think about.
I believe you completed, but I think it's, since we're on YouTube or whatever, I think it's very important that she comes and lets us know what her vision is. Because we are partners. Public service.
I think that, a couple of things that I would hope are in there are just things around the implementation for the more recently had things, especially things that are going into effect this school year. Looking at things for Representative Patterson and I talked a bit about what could it look like for members to better understand implementation, if it makes sense to, this is an idea I would like to put on the table for transition. If it would make sense for members to possibly be part of some school visits from this throughout the year or other things, so folks can see like how SEO is going to proceed, what it looks like to have financial literacy and all kinds of proceed, what some of the social studies looks like, since we have passed several things that are have big implications, and I don't know how members feel about a shared sense of what that would look like in schools. But if that is something that people would be interested in, that might be one thing we can talk about as far as like how we have a window in to what implementation looks like. They're also to open to other ideas around how we have a window in, not so much as like a pony show or a gotcha moment, just like shared information and understanding. I don't know if people have any reactions to that, if that would be helpful or of interest. And it's worth us pursuing as a transition item for us. And I do need some responsiveness now, given we are about to meet with the person.
Because we have, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 4 sets of standards that are being implemented in this school year. Social studies, financial literacy, social emotional learning standards, and the menstrual health.
Menstrual health was in the past. Menstrual health was in the past.
It was passed. Okay. So it's free.
But that doesn't mean that carries.
No, I know, but I would, you know, my first question would be, is what does the training look like this summer? For those 3 different standards. Because we really don't know anything about, because teachers must be in training right now. For all 3 of them.
Yes, so some of that has been shared in previous presentations while I was in time. If it is helpful to pull some of that out to my board members, or to talk about what folks can go to, like, so for example, we voted on the financial literacy, there were, and I don't, all the dates in my head, okay, but there, part of that was, here's how it will roll out, here's how we will prepare teachers. And so it is probably fair to ask if there are any shifts that we should know about, or if there are any changes that we should know about as far as implementation for the summer. But I do want to note that the different iterations that has been shared with us, and we probably want to know if that's true. I'm also asking if there are other things that are helpful around implementation, like this idea of shared visits, and if members would be interested in that.
You were talking about shared visits in the schools.
Correct.
But
Like over the course of the school year. I'm
I'd
saying,
love to sit in to a social study standards workshop this summer.
yes, and I am saying, yes, we can ask if there are any changes to that and get the updated list and see if folks can sit in. But that technically has been shared with us before in the different presentations we have, yes.
Because they're doing it, but I'm aware.
Other thoughts?
Are you under the impression that they are doing school visits already, then we could just?
I'm not really any impression. I'm making a suggestion about how his members. Since the station. It's very much of a concern to us. No. So there's been nothing but before us that would allow for that.
I'm just thinking of the comparative value of doing a visit along with them, or just like doing our own kind of checking with our students.
I don't think this will permit that. Okay, maybe I should put it like this, email post to that. Trying to post them. Silence for that. No one is opposed, and there are no more topics. On the website, that's the decided. Graduate profile, so we do not have more clarity on this from OSI. We will, I believe that. So there's a list of what they shared with us at the last time about the and that we put it in place for the last. Yeah, but that's not new. That's it's from the last meeting. Yes, okay, but maybe I should be more clear. You have this in your folder. But there is no additional info, there's nothing new from the last time we talked about graduate profiles from OSI. There are no new updates, but you do have this in your folder. We are clear that OSI is going to take these steps in June and August around public engagement. And then we also know that they will come to us in August and present a draft profile. We only have a date of fall 2024 where they will publish the final graduate profile. One of my questions to the board is if the board has any interest in doing our own engagement around graduate profiles and getting feedback, since it is something that we probably will have some insights for. And so I want to open that question up. I have some ideas around, might not be on this list from OSI, that will be worth us reaching out to. But I want to check with those first to see, and I also want to know, we've added a couple of things that I know it sounds like a virtual engagement always fit down. There's a outstanding question about a survey for I don't know what to call it, safety and from the student experience committee. But we do have this timeline that we've not discussed. As far as the board collecting any feedback, so we can weigh in what should be the right.
So when OSI comes in August, are they gonna tell them about this?
When OSI comes in August, they should be presenting us the draft profile, and they will probably have some high-level summaries of what they have heard from people they have talked to.
Because they have public engagement here from June to August. And I know they got the awards 1 through 8 education council, but I don't know about your education council and your board, but my education council is a meeting in July. then there's talking about they're gonna present the draft at our working session.
Correct.
And so they could, and then we're gonna meet with them again.
That is not necessarily on the agenda. Everything that has been decided upon is. You don't see it here, it's not decided upon. So I am not suggesting that this is sufficient. I also just know that it's possible some of these meetings could be not public meetings.
The
Right?
only reason I'm saying this is, our relationship with OSSI has changed dramatically over this couple of years. And like, they're publishing the final graduate profile in the fall. And between our working session, they're publishing it, but there's nothing in here about the kind of stuff that we had to do, that we did really done. As far as social studies standards, financial literacy standards, social emotional learning standards. Where we had, they gave us something, we either agreed or disagreed and sent it back to them. They gave it to us again, da, 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 da. And we went through all of those iterations to come up with what we decided to vote for.
Part of the reason for that is the state board doesn't have any statutory authority over the portion of the graduate.
But we won't vote.
So, you know, you might vote in favor of it, but that doesn't really play a role in whether us vision. For the graduation requirements, you all have to vote on it.
Oh, I see what you're
But for
saying.
the portion for graduate, it's sort of like a courtesy for
It's
us.
not statutory. It is also not necessarily as technical as standards. What I'm asking the board though is what do we want to do to participate in this process at all? I see representatives.
I say, yes, I do think we should, once we receive the draft, whenever it is, we should engage publicly on the draft. I think in addition to, you know, who maybe they haven't reached out to specifically, we also, it's worth checking in with them to see if their input was included or not. Final for the draft. Right.
I agree with what you're saying, because it was brought up earlier about, a panel on graduation profiles from other states, all right?
Yeah.
That, you know, that's what we wanted. We want to have that same kind of input that we have with the other, with our partnership with us.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I brought up the possibility of a panel around, which you can vote on this month, I don't. But one of the reasons I brought this up is because we will have the draft profile, and we can get feedback from folks, at that meeting. That can be one step. We also can take other steps, to engage. I would just make an assumption, that Austin, of course, is in a bit of transition, and Dr. Mitchell was leading the graduate profile work, and was a lot more on the plate. Given she's the person in the interim superintendent role, and therefore, in broader engagement than what we see on the sheet. I don't want to take that for granted, but I think could be something, that is not only positive, but additive, and it would be interest from the public and would also prepare us, to do some work around the high school graduation requirements. And I actually think in general, a unified vision of what we say every student will graduate from high school being prepared to do the whatever is important. Like that is the kind of thing you probably want to talk to people about. I know Representative Blair is trying to be patient about it. I saw you a couple times. So
I think now understanding kind of what your vision was for the panel, I think we should proceed ahead with that as the September topic, because we'll have the draft before us. So rather than have a separate public engagement session where we've got to, try to gather, people, we would have a session in September, a public meeting where we can share the draft with everyone, because it's public at that point. People can come and speak on it, and then we can gather experts in the city, who may be able to give expert testimony on this issue. And I think that I didn't understand kind of your vision for this. So I think, given kind of the timeline you've now laid out for the approval of this, you know, coupled with the fact we really didn't have a strong public panel, could I make a motion to reconsider I'd like to move a motion to reconsider the motion to postpone the selection of the public panel until the next meeting. I believe that's allowed under Robert's rules. There's a second for it, and then we could make this the panel and start getting panelists.
I think that is absolutely true.
All
I'm
right,
just convinced because the staff is like, oh, that would have been a good panel. We wish they would have voted on that.
yeah.
That was in our personal chat.
Oh, well, see, look at that.
So y'all come back around without us saying anything.
You should have just chimed in. So I moved that motion at this time.
Second.
All in favor of the motion to reconsider, please say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I don't know if someone wants to now introduce the motion.
I move that we do a September panel on graduate programs.
Right, is there a second?
I would second that.
All right, there's a second and a third. All in favor of having the graduate profiles, on the topic for September, please say aye.
Aye.
Right, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I'm now going to move us back to the schedule to see, just to, and we can, and if it is helpful to, work with the committee, appropriate committee or somebody, or to kind of parse out what some of this could look like, but does it sound like you would like to entertain, some engagement around graduate, not necessarily a separate engagement session, but some steps to engage the public and make sure they are aware of this work, and we collect more voice around this work as they go forward. Yeah, I still say it's a yes.
And I think it may be helpful for the meeting with us next week, to get, in the previous last month, we remember them. We asked if they were going to do a public engagement comment period on their website. They had not planned to do it, but that was one of the things that the leadership brought forward would be a good idea to have a public comment period so that folks can comment on whatever draft that they see. It might be worth adding to the agenda to see what the decision was on that and when that would start.
So, if, no one is opposed, I'm gonna follow up, with the, college and career readiness committee, around potential engagement, activity, around readiness. Next, SBOE Academic Excellence Awards for graduates. So, given this graduate profile work is happening and we are coming off fresh off the graduate season, I want to put on the table the idea that the board actually offers some type of recognition during our next graduation season. I know that many of us do attend graduations. I also know that part of our statutory role in public education is actually, like as I define it for folks who ask me what the board does do, it is all about what kids learn. And graduation is really the culmination of what our kids have learned. And so I would like to put on the table the board exploring some possibility of at graduations doing our own award, whether it be for a distinguished set of graduates who might, I don't know, simplify what a graduate profile is, or something that certifies you at all the things. Everyone else kind of weighs in on graduations, but if you go to charter school graduations, the charter school board representative is there and does certify, something. DCPS has awards, academic awards, but most people who interact with the board do not have some type of tangible and positive example of what our work actually is. And so I think in a board for some type of recognition, whatever it looks like might be a good way to embody our work for people. It would also just be nice for graduates to have as they graduate. So I want to get any initial reactions to that. I'm not tied to it looking a certain way, but I did want to put it on the table. If that was something the board would like to change for not now, but possibly preparing ourselves to the next. Yes, yes.
Are you envisioning for high school, if each high school would got something?
It could be per high school, it could be one person for high school, it could be, if we decided we wanted to do something broader, that was like for all students, it could be like the Stolen Road, I don't know. So I'm not, this is purely, at the infancy of like what is possible. And I would like us to talk about what is possible. I'm very familiar with that, so.
I don't know if you all know, I have I started a scholarship for AP students at Cardozo, now it's been a while ago. And the qualifications for the scholarship, this year we gave 18 students got a check for $1,300 apiece. And it has to do with Jaime Escalante. Are you all familiar with Jaime Escalante, the movie Stand and Deliver? But he talks, he's like my role model, AP teacher. And he would always talk about goddess, about desire. All right, so that the students who got the AP scholarship at Cardozo weren't necessarily the best students academically, but they came to class every day, did the best they could do in class. Their behavior was. We didn't really, never gets to that. But it's an award for someone who exhibits this goddess, the ability to be motivated and graduate from high school. Right? So I think the only caveat I would add is that it's not, because at the graduations, I went to 4 this year. And, most of the people who got awards were like the valedictorian, salutatorian, the top 10%, whatever. All right, but this is not, it should not be an award, an academic award, I don't think. I think it should be an award that exhibits what the profile says you're supposed to do to graduate. And it's got to incorporate hard work and community service and all these other things that make the epitome for what we want the graduation profile. That's just my opinion.
One thing that you all might consider as an option for doing this, and I bring this up because I was reading about it today, in terms of the graduation policies that other states have. One thing that Virginia does is their state board of education confers seals that are like essentially extra awards that for students that meet certain criteria, and they have ones that are academic honors, but also have an engagement one. They have one for excellence, so environmental of them. And so I'm not sure exactly how we would establish one because we'll into that. That's something that you all wanted to do, but other state boards do offer distinctions for students that have it.
Other thoughts? Not that we have to end up, and I will be transparent. My goal is not for us to arrive at a decision. My goal is to gauge interest if this is something we want to discuss. And we feel we have a good amount of runway to do this, just to gauge interest. So if that is okay for folks, it just sounds like it is okay for folks. Then talk about what perhaps committee or something. All right. We've already discussed the kindergarten teacher literacy engagement event. So I'm moving us to calling for an end to legacy and donor admission preferences in post-secondary education towards representing the Black.
Thank you, President Thompson. We all heard the testimony from the advocates who came in before the State Board of Education, which I thought was very compelling on this issue. I mean, in light of the Supreme Court's ruling on the Harvard case that gutted affirmative action, it really prevented that important mechanism from being able to increase the diversity in our schools and universities. To me, it only makes sense to get rid of something that really maintains the status quo, and statistically at least. And so this resolution, what it does is it recommends an end to legacy admissions and donor preferences in terms of applications to higher universities. Now, what we did is we circulated an amendment nature of substitute. There was a back and forth discussion in committee. I want to thank Representative Henderson for his leadership in getting this out of the committee. There was discussion about how do we provide an exception for schools and universities that already have a large number of either minority students or students from lower incomes. And speaking with the advocates on this, you know, the thought was that around if a school's got 30% of Pell eligible students, that they're already really doing yeoman's work in terms of trying to increase the diversity of their population. And they should be then allowed to use legacy as a tool. So for DC, that would automatically include Howard, it would include UDC in the list of schools. No, Howard would, yeah, they have 30% Pell eligible students right now, at least for what I'm told. I mean, we can double check and confirm before the next meeting, but I was told Howard would meet that criteria of 30%. And it would give an exception for them. So I'll confirm that for you, Representative O'Leary, though, just to make sure, and circulate it to all members. What we did, instead of saying Pell grants, we said Pell eligible based on income, because we didn't want to discriminate against dreamers in the country who may be low income, but because of their citizenship cannot qualify for a Pell grant. So we didn't want to penalize a university that had low income students, just statistically speaking, probably more Hispanic students, to try to in any way punish having those students in the university. So they would be able to count those students if they met the income criteria of a Pell grant towards the 30% number. And I'm glad to take questions on this. It's similar to the discussion we had earlier. I know there may not be unanimity on it, which is understandable, but I think it's worth advancing to the full board. And then I'm willing to, between now and the vote, if there's any further amendments, if anybody wants to discuss, just give me a call and go ahead and talk about it.
Probably two transferring on two tracks. One, as somebody who, like my mom was a UDC graduate, my mom was a non-traditional UDC graduate, and yes, I was a Pell student, but I went to the university to have an Ivy League graduate. I'm a Black Ivy League graduate, and I do have some reservation about the fact that we now have more people who are Black people who work really hard to have access to certain just like spaces and places. And we have like a first, maybe in some cases a second, who are very privileged generation of Black and brown people who now will be able to benefit from legacy admissions. And we are removing legacy admissions. And I don't think, I don't know if they're talking about that. Now, I'm not saying that that is, I completely understand that is an exceptional experience. And I use exceptional in the purest sense of that is the exception in many cases to the rule. But it doesn't make it not an experience. And given that if I had a kid now that was applying to Penn, they would not be able to benefit necessarily from affirmative action. They would also not be able to benefit from legacy admission, and then they would just be a DC student. Do you know how many kids from these places like DC
go to like the ends of the world and or even like that. So that's just something I want to just put out there that I don't know if folks are going to raise because they don't want to look elitist. It's kind of uncomfortable to say, but it is a thing. And just like we have a large Black population of graduates from Georgetown who are in this city. And I would imagine they also are having a bit of there's some consternation around what does it mean to actually make decisions that start to close racial wealth gaps and other things. Like, what does that actually take? Because it's not like all of a sudden, because I had that experience, that my family is like uber wealthy or uber privileged or uber, right? That's just not the reality. So I just want to state that. And I'm not quite sure how to tackle that, but I do want to state it, and I don't want that to be overlooked because we often applaud like the homeless to Harvard or, you know, all those things. And then we say, you don't get to benefit as much as all the people who have been able to do that for generations. So I just want to lay that out there. My second thought is I worry about the conflation between Pale and legacy without necessarily addressing minority serving institutions. Because while race and income in many ways are inextricably linked, Black and brown does not equal 100% poor. I could not afford to go to Spelman. Spelman never sent me a financial aid package, and most people who go to Spelman pay a lot of money to go to Spelman. I just want to lay that out there. And the reason you have to pay a lot of money to go to a school like Spelman or to a school like Morehouse is because they don't have the endowments that the other schools I got into gave me. Spelman never sent me a package. That was probably my worst package, and it's a really good package. I paid very little to go to the University of Pennsylvania. But I could have gone to Harvard for free. I could have gone to Princeton for free because they had need-based admissions, need-based financial aid. And so that was a decision my family had to make about what does it cost for me to go to school. And so there are institutions like Spelman, which is the #1 HBCU in the country, period, that Black poor people might not be able to go to, and you would still, you know what I mean? Like the Pale, Black and poor are not interchangeable. There's a correlation, but they are not the same. And so that does, these things are complicated. I appreciate a lot of the pushes to try to figure out how do we address any of the things that have come up, especially with this problematic Supreme Court. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying anything has to be perfect, but I do want to be honest around at least my own experience and how this would have affected me as a student, or how it would affect like generations of my family to come. Like my fiance was the first time MBA graduate. His dad was one of the first MBA graduates. He's really proud of that as like a Black person. And there were no Black people before him in the MBA.
My son graduated from UVA. His grandfather graduated from UVA. And he was a legacy. Yeah. So I don't think this is something that we should be doing. Just because not right now, there needs to be more conversation about what the ramifications are. Because like when I was saying about Howard, Howard may have, I can't imagine Howard having 30 percent. No, UDC, I mean, I'm a UDC person. I've been teaching there for over 40 years. And I know what kind of people graduate from UDC, right? But they're not, and we have legacy students, we have students who are, but they don't need legacy to get into UDC. They may go there because their mother graduated from UDC or their father graduated from UDC. But there's no legacy involved in the enrollment. So UDC is not even in the mix as far as legacy is concerned. But the only, and UDC is the only public university in the District of Columbia. So all of the other private universities are, if we had a resolution about this, it doesn't affect them at all. At all. And I think we should, if we're doing a resolution, it should be something that's going to change something, or at least move something. I don't think this, I wouldn't vote for this.
Yeah, go ahead first. Yeah, first
No,
round.
you had your hand up.
No, but first round, go.
Yeah, I think I'm also in line with what I've heard already. And I think we shared this during our committee meeting. I think that there are a lot of unintended consequences to well-meaning legislation. And if we think about it, you know, what is the ideal goal? The ideal goal is to create an atmosphere that is more equitable. And while historically this has disenfranchised many people, as the years continue to go on, more and more Black and Brown students would have those opportunities because we have more people who are going to college. And so, me personally, I'm not in favor of stripping away one of the very few opportunities that people are having, like once, like after we really are just now getting to a place where that is an option. And so it's like for years, everyone else has been able to take advantage of this. And now that we have that opportunity is being stripped away. And so me personally, I'm not in favor of that for that reason. And so I think I'll leave it at that.
So does anybody else want first round on this? So for me, I still feel strongly that this is something that's important. It's important for this reason. I think we're talking about exceptional circumstances, not necessarily what is driving the statistical norm. We have a lot of students in DC who a realistic chance, now that with affirmative action gone, a realistic chance to get into some of our best universities, given all the challenges that they face in terms of trying to uplift themselves out of poverty. I think statistically, I hear what you're saying, Representative Best, and what you're saying, both Representative President Thompson and Representative O'Leary. But I think the issue is how do we try to keep that path open to the vast majority of our students who aren't going to be legacy enrollees. And I think what we want to try to do is accelerate over time the percentage of those students that can get in. So maybe an approach that would solve both of these issues is to, rather than saying 30% Pell eligible, is picking a number right now that forces colleges and universities to try to increase its diversity. They would have been there maybe anyways through affirmative action, but to increase that number through Pell Grants, which I think are something that's a very valuable tool and really benefits the vast majority of our statistical DCPS population. So maybe we don't do 30%, but we pick a number that will allow universities to hit a reachable goal. That would then reopen their ability to do the legacy admissions to benefit students that both of you are talking about. So let's say that right now, we're seeing with some of our colleges and universities in DC, a Pell eligibility of 5%. And I'm making that number up, but I'll get the actual data before we vote. If it's 5%, then we set 10% as a goal. We push the university to try to continue to strive to increase its enrollment from underserved populations so that it can open up what you're talking about, which is then the ability to serve students that it wants to bring in through legacy admissions. So I don't view this as an either or on this. And I certainly would never want to do something that would hurt the diversity in our colleges and universities. I think statistically, this does not do that. And what I'm open to is continuing to work with the advocates, get you actual data in terms of the percent of Pell eligible students that our DC colleges and universities currently enroll. And then what we could look at is trying to come up with a number that would actually continue to push that affirmative action strove to, get of increasing access for our students here in DC. And I think that's what this is about, is increasing access for students in DC who otherwise, without that path, aren't going to have the ability to benefit, like prior generations potentially did through that program. So
I thankfully aware that most students who go to DCPS schools and through DCPS schools are not going to our selective institutions in the city. The issue though is not because of legacy admissions. There's a lot of issues along the way that we as a state board really do need to deal with. And I say that as somebody who knows how much my peers struggle. Like I have a friend, graduated alongside me, went to Georgetown and struggled. It is all too common that unfortunately students graduate from our schools. They're like, I was valedictorian, I was honor roll all the way through, and I'm taking remedial classes at college, right? And so like we talk about like access, and then there's like preparedness and the experience, and I think that's our job. I would also say though, that most people who are in those schools are not people from DC, and that was true when affirmative action was in place. And so I do question, like, it's not that I question the goal, I question the levers we should pull to reach that goal. I would also just offer that, similar to what Representative Best said about just like the country changing. I actually read an article yesterday. I'm gonna say skim because I didn't read the whole thing, but I read enough of it to understand. There was an article in the 74 yesterday, or in my Google alerts about the 74 yesterday. Mike Petroni wrote it afterward. Transparent, or a more conservative scholar, right? And the question he was asking himself is essentially like, what was the golden age in education? And after a whole host of analysis, he arrived at, you could argue the golden age of education is actually like the millennials, like late 90s, early 2000s, when folks were graduating, because that's when we had the most people going into higher education. And folks, what they got wrong, from his opinion, in the nation at risk, was they said, oh no, our test scores are dropping in SAT. And the truth of the matter was a different population, a less elite population, was starting to take the SAT. Those people are the people who are those people are the people who are Blacker, who are browner, who are poorer, who would now be starting to have kids. And so I'm looking at this as like, what are the unintended consequences of the future? Not only who is sitting in our schools now, and what does it take to actually create access to spaces and create opportunities for equity? And so I do not at all disagree with the goal. I do have some great concerns about unintended consequences, and I would just renew my literally, it gives me heartburn to say, just because we're going to like, affirmative action was about race. Race is not the same as low income. It is not the same. And you can't just say, we're gonna let more poor people in, because poor people, and I don't have anything against poor white people. But poor people could be poor white people. It does not necessarily mean that they will be Black people. And we should never be comfortable enough to interchange race and income. Those are not the same. There is correlation and there's some causation that has happened over generations, but they are not the same. So I'm happy to do some more research. I'm happy to think about like what could be put on the table. I get the goal, I really do. But I'm also like, and how do we create solutions that help us create the bridges of the future?
Well, I just want to commit to working with everybody. I want to see where the votes are before. Now, what are we voting on today? Is this just the discussion of it? There's no vote today, right? It would just be, this is the process. So my commitment today would be to double back. I've been taking notes on everything that's been said today. To call members, talk to them again, reach back out and try to get some better data on this, so we have actual data in terms of what the impact would be in DC. And then, if the votes aren't there on it, I think as you said, President Thompson, that we then look for another approach on this. And I just want to remain committed to working with everybody here to see what we can, if we can address your concerns and get hopefully something that, arrives at consensus, but achieves the goal I think we're all striving to get here. So I'll just leave it at that. I know the hour is getting late, so I'll keep working on this between now and then. And if we find the votes aren't there, then I'll motion to table until we can get something people can support. So we'll keep working on it.
Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you for everybody for participating in the discussion. I am a little bit unclear if Representative Reed wanted to just note the items or she wanted further discussion on those items today.
Based on the notes, it sounded like she would send follow-up about it.
So we should look out for an email, perhaps. Okay. Is that? I just want to make sure. So that was our last item there for new business, for discussions tonight. Were there any other announcements? Yes.
So tomorrow, for people who love America, watermelon, hot dogs, children, Palisades is having a parade. It's the best community parade that you will find anywhere in the country. I would say, at least a little biased on that, but and I want to make sure, like, the State Board of Ed should be represented at these big parades. Like we always keep getting stuck on the Pride parades, early deadline and cost. But this one's free. It doesn't cost us anything. I'm going to be there. I know Representative Patterson is going to send some of his people to be there. I've got a couple other commitments on this, and I have the candy already purchased. So we got candy. The kids have their little trick or treat bags. It's really fun. If any of the staff want to join us, also bring your kids. If you have kids or you want to see happy kids, they're all there. And you can come out, just tell me after the meeting, and I'll give you instructions on how to get there. It starts at 11. The lineup will be there, and I'll have everything set up. So I think it's just important for our State Board of Ed to be present at these things and have let people know who we are. And maybe do we have any more of those things we can pass out, those handouts? I'm not going to pass it out instead of candy, but
So we have
like just
2,000 handouts, we have bags. Well, I don't suggest you throw ink pens at people, but we have boxes of ink pens.
No, I think the kids want candy. They don't want anything other than candy.
So maybe
But I think just if people say, well, hey, I'd like to learn more about you, I just like to have a little stack of cards. Because there'll be, if the parade doesn't do it for you, there's then a reception afterwards in the park with bounce houses, all the food you can eat for free, and really fun time. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a great time. And but that's where I'd like to have the cards to just let people know a little bit more about us and promote our great institution here of the DC State Board of Education. So if anybody wants to join me, it'll be a good time.
Yeah, no.
6 o'clock. Tomorrow night at the Soldiers Home, Rock Creek Church Road, and Ward 4, there's a kids parade. For little kids.
Can you send the details on that? You can
6
just-
o'clock, Old Soldiers Home.
Okay, but,
Rock Creek Church.
all right,
That's it, that's all I got.
I thought like, okay.
Those were the three things. All right, I don't see anyone else chomping at the bit to make an announcement. So I want to thank members for the time and engagement this evening. We will next convene at our public meeting on July 17th. Wait. Yes. Just an announcement, with 4th of July being tomorrow at the office, clearly the government's closed. We decided to also give staff that Friday off as a thank you for all the hard work they've been doing. It's a FYI. Sorry, I wasn't actually in the No worries, I'm really genuine in that indirectly, we've been talking about follow up, what the big reports, what people say again, for people, if anyone's made it to the end of the broadcast, that the state board offices will be closed, in observance of 4th of July, both on the 4th of July and, on Friday, opening the following Monday. Any other announcements? I don't need that, TJ. Okay, all right, so, the public meeting, I just gonna finish the statement so we can get to the long awaited motion to adjourn. The public meeting will be held in the old council chambers at 41 4th Street Northwest. Anyone who wishes to provide testimony can sign up at SBOE.ec.gov by the deadline of Monday, July 15th at 5:30 p.m. Seeing no further business before the board, I would now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll make it. I'd like to make a motion.
All right, is there?
Second.
All right, so, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed can stay here. This meeting of the State Board of Education is adjourned at 22 p.m. on July 3rd, 2024. Thank you, everyone.